Folks, welcome back to the channel. We're diving deep into the latest political theater, and today it's a real blockbuster. Special Counsel Jack Smith, the man behind the curtain of some of the most talked about investigations in recent memory, is finally facing a GOP-led committee. And let me tell you, the spin is already thicker than a California fog bank. The mainstream media is trying to paint a picture, but we're here to look at what's really going on. Let's roll the clip.
Here in Washington, former special counsel Jack Smith is testifying behind closed doors to a GOP-led committee investigating his investigation of Donald Trump during his time out of power. Smith is rejecting President Trump's allegations that he was out to get him. In his opening statement obtained by CNN, Smith said, quote, "The basis for those charges rests entirely with President Trump and his actions." Republicans have baselessly claimed Smith was part of a Biden administration conspiracy to target Trump. Now, Trump himself recently called Smith deranged and a criminal. My panel is back, and we are joined now by Caitlin Polantz. What do we know so far about this testimony?
Well, Dana, the biggest headline right now is that he's talking. He's not taking the fifth. He's not declining to answer questions. We know that Smith is responding to questions of the committee. That's notable. Not just because it's notable to have this former special counsel testifying for the very first time in a setting like this. It's also notable because the knives are out for him, and there's a lot of possibilities where he could walk into a situation where somebody wants to see him criminally prosecuted, whether that's a court, the Justice Department itself, Trump already out there saying he wants to see him behind bars, or the Republicans on Capitol Hill. They actually had a deputy previously from Smith's investigation. The man who led the January 6th investigation has already gotten a criminal referral for obstructing Congress, for declining to answer some questions in this investigation. And so the perils that Smith has in how he navigates this interview, he can't decline to answer because he could get a referral like Thomas Windham, another prosecutor on his team, for obstruction of Congress. But then if he gives too much information, there's always the possibility that Congress could accuse him of making a false statement if he says something different than what's in the record or what someone else on his team is testifying to. And then there are court orders and Justice Department restrictions around information from the classified documents case, evidence from the classified documents case against Trump, the volume 2 of the report under seal, and then grand jury secrecy. So much at stake here that even get you to the substance of this, where Republicans, we know, are very unhappy with his oversight of an investigation that included using or looked at toll records of phones, so the logs of calls that had been made in the past of members of Congress. Although we do know from what we've heard so far about what Smith is saying that he believes that he wasn't choosing the members of Congress that they got the phone records on. That was because Donald Trump himself was trying to call members of Congress on January 6th, 2021 in the middle of that violence.
Isaac?
Yeah, look, first of all, the idea that this was a Biden conspiracy, it runs up to me against all the people that I knew in the Biden White House who were being driven crazy by how Jack Smith was not doing what they would have hoped he would have been doing and being more forceful and fast in proceeding with this. Now, that doesn't mean that there wasn't one, but it would certainly be news to a lot of the people in the Biden West Wing that they were part of a conspiracy. The other thing that Jack Smith has here is that, look, January 6th happened. We all saw those images, and we also all saw those images of all the documents that were stored in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago when that raid happened. Again, that doesn't mean that the criminal procedure was done necessarily in exactly the right way, but there was a basis for these investigations, and that seems to be, the idea that they were even looked at all seems to be offensive to some of the people involved.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Jim Jordan said. Listen to, he's running this investigation. Listen to what he said this morning.
This was political. This was about going after the Republican Party. And most importantly, it was about going after our candidate for president, President Trump.
And that's really what it comes down to. Republicans are repeating over and over, and they did at the behest of Donald Trump back when he was actually being prosecuted for these things, which we did see with our own eyes January 6th. And the question of his culpability, that's clearly what the whole process is for, the judicial process is for. So it's a question of whether you just leave it alone or whether you say, you know what, Republicans are going to call this political and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Donald Trump is very angry, right? And he believes there was a big conspiracy, Biden at the head of it, to get him. And so now there is a, retribution is happening. And you've seen that already with Jim Comey. You've seen that with Tish James. It's not necessarily going anywhere. We'll see what happens with Jack Smith. But this is essentially what he ran on. I will be your retribution. He talked to his MAGA supporters, and he feels like he has to deliver. And he also just feels aggrieved. And that is part of the glue that keeps MAGA together, and it also just fuels him. So much of his time is spent on this, on Truth Social, going after these people who he thinks went after him.
And it's also whether he's going to be, he said, I will be your retribution, but he's actually, for most of the year, spent time being his own retribution.
His own retribution. Exactly right. And that's in various ways during those 11 interviews that Susie Wiles did with Vanity Fair. She said that she doesn't think it's a retribution tour at one point, but she also admitted in a couple of instances that basically it is.
Basically it is, certainly for Letitia James, but also
score settling.
For sure, score settling, and indicated during one of the interviews that transpired throughout the year that she was going to give him like 50 days, I believe it said.
Yeah, I think it was 90 days.
Oh, was it 90? Okay,
90
for
days,
retribution. Well, that has long expired. But look, but one of the, I guess, the bigger picture challenges of this is if the midterm elections are still about this, that doesn't necessarily solve what we were talking about at the beginning of the program, the biggest challenge facing the White House, affordability, the economy. This voters in the middle aren't as interested in this as MAGA supporters who always have the president's back. So it's a bit of, I'm sure the president loves to see Jack Smith walking through the hallways, but it doesn't solve his bigger political problem.
I want to welcome former state and federal prosecutor David Weinstein, who joins us from Miami. David, good to have you with us. So from your perspective as a former federal prosecutor, what is the significance of Jack Smith testifying privately before the House Judiciary Committee?
Well, as Annie pointed out, it's more of a structured setting. They'll be asking him questions, but in the way that any deposition would take place. They'll be led by one individual. There won't be time constraints. We won't have to hear about, I need a couple of minutes back based on that answer or things like that. This is very much more of a structured type of hearing. However, the answers are going to still be the same. He's going to be able to talk about what he did, how he did it, and to the extent he has any information about what the results were, he's going to be limited by what he cannot say about matters that occurred before a grand jury that are covered by the grand jury secrecy rules, unless a judge orders him to be allowed to disclose that. And as Andy pointed out, the second part of his report is still tied up in court down here in South Florida. He can't talk about that either. So they may be asking a lot of questions, but I'm not sure they're going to get a lot of answers.
Yeah, interesting. And I do want to understand, how common is it for a former special counsel to be subpoenaed for a private deposition, and what the legal procedures and implications might be?
Not very common at all. Again, every time we seem to be talking about what's going on now, we talk about things that are uncommon. This doesn't happen very often because there are rules governing appointments of special prosecutors. Their cases are then analyzed and matters are filed or not filed, and that's generally been the end of it. We've seen a lot of hearings lately, though, where people are being called into Congress or the Senate to be giving these exact type of testimony that we're seeing here today.
So I'm wondering, in terms of, trust, do these types of, congressional depositions pose risks of politicizing, a special counsel's investigation, and how might that affect the broader justice system?
Well, I think if you look at the statements that Jack Smith released before he went in, let's key on a couple of things, and I will answer your question. He talked about how he analyzed this not with a view towards whether the person was a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, and he simply was doing the job that he's been trained to do, as all prosecutors are trained to do. Let someone gather the facts, look at the facts, compare those to the law, and then determine whether or not there's sufficient facts to support charges under the law. And so in his mind, or at least in the statements he's made, this was not political at all. But it's being politicized now by the hearings and accusations that are being made. Remember, one of the other things he said at the end of his prepared statement was, if put in the same position today, I still wouldn't look at whether or not the person I was investigating was a Republican or a Democrat. I would just look at the facts that were given to me. So he's not politicizing this. It's the people who are asking the questions who are politicizing this.
And there you have it, folks. Another deep dive into the political circus that is Washington, D.C. It's clear that when it comes to accountability, justice, and especially politics, things are never as simple as they appear on the surface. What do you think? Is Jack Smith truly an apolitical actor, or is this whole investigation steeped in politics? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay informed, and keep asking the tough questions.